A family on summer vacation drives into one of the hottest, most unforgiving landscapes on Earth with two small children in the back seat, believing they are taking a harmless shortcut across the desert. Within hours, the road disappears and they don't yet understand the kind of isolation they have just entered. How do you explain to your children that you don't know where you are anymore, and how does a family vacation turn into a survival situation without anyone noticing the exact moment it happens? Welcome back to The Obvious Enigma. Let's tell their story and follow how an ordinary detour became something far more dangerous than anyone inside that vehicle could have imagined. California's Death Valley earns its name for a reason. It is the hottest place anywhere on Earth, where surface temperatures regularly exceed a staggering 70 degrees Celsius. That is hot enough to boil an egg. Walking here barefoot for even just 2 minutes would be enough to irreversibly damage your feet, and that's not even considering the air temperature and dryness. Yet, this area attracts thousands of what are known as extreme summer heat tourists each year. In the hot summer months of July 1996, 34-year-old architect Egbert Rimkus and his 27-year-old girlfriend Cornelia booked a flight from Germany to Los Angeles, California. They brought their 11 and 4-year-old sons along for the holiday and rented a minivan before spending a few days touring Southern California and Las Vegas. Then, on July 22nd, they drove into Death Valley National Park, carrying luggage, water bottles, snacks, and maps for what they thought would be a nice scenic drive through the desert, as unbelievable as that may sound. The family purchased a German-language park guide, camped overnight in Furnace Creek, and the next day hiked into a backcountry mining area. In an abandoned cabin old visitor's log, Cornelia left an entry on July 23rd signing their names and stating that they were headed through the pass over nearby mountains. What Cornelia described here is the Mengel Pass, a difficult jeep trail over the Panamint Range. They likely saw this route on their guide map and thought it would be a shortcut with some stunning views along the way. But what Cornelia didn't know, however, is that this path can barely be traversed by purpose-built four-wheel drive jeeps, and that it's explicitly marked as unsuitable for passenger vehicles. At some point, they turned off the main road. Ahead of them, nothing but an endless stretch of what can barely be considered a dirt path. There was no shade and no landmarks. The further they drove, the narrower this path became. Gravel turned into loose rock, and they were long past any road signs or turnaround points. By early afternoon, the air temperature outside the minivan had climbed to past 45 degrees Celsius. Inside the car it was worse, trapped air warming against metal, the glass amplifying sunlight. The rough surface took its toll on the vehicle and slowly began shredding the tires. The four of them were now driving on the rims, through the desert on loose rocky surface, in heat that would quickly become fatal if they were exposed. Eventually, the minivan reached a point near Anvil Spring Canyon, where the road deteriorated completely. Sharp rocks, impassable terrain, one wheel detached, and the undercarriage struck stone. The vehicle could go no further. The four of them now no longer had the luxury to drive. They were now stranded completely with nothing but desert surrounding them for miles. Against standard desert survival advice of staying in place, the parents left the minivan and chose to walk, but not back towards the road, forward towards the mountains, probably believing help was just beyond. They took their two young children, Georg and Max, with them. The heat must have been especially harsh on them. With only 11 and 4 years old respectively, they were likely given the majority of what little water and supplies they brought with them. Turning back now meant retracing countless miles backwards, now on foot, which they had originally driven by car. The thought of that was likely too much to bear in their current condition. But they were already long past the point of return. It didn't matter anymore which path they'd choose. The nearest buildings were located here, 8 kilometers from their location, marking an old estate called Barker Ranch. It was used from the 1940s to the 1960s as a mining property. It became more widely known afterwards for being the main headquarters for the infamous serial killer Charles Manson and his family. Since the 1970s, this ranch is completely abandoned, and due to its extreme remoteness, it is never visited by anybody. If they had continued in the direction they chose, then it would have taken them more than 100 kilometers over mountainous terrain until they would have reached the nearest highway. This gives you an idea just how hopeless their situation was. To them, it probably felt like they were on the moon, nothing but canyons and valleys wherever they looked. Nobody knew where they were, nobody was coming to help them, worst of all, nobody was even missing them yet. All while they fought through the heat, nearing collapse without any water, shelter or supplies. heat illness starts subtly. A person affected by this will experience dizziness and headaches, confusion and poor judgment. In later stages, the body stops sweating entirely when the internal cooling system fails and the brain diverts all remaining blood away from the skin to protect vital organs. What exactly happened to them on that fateful day is unknown. The family had a flight booked back to Germany on the 26th of July, 3 days after they drove into the desert, but there's no recording that they have ever boarded that flight. When July 26th passed with no contact, Egbert's relatives in Germany alerted US authorities that the vacationers were missing. Death Valley Rangers and volunteer teams launched a massive summer search, scouring remote canyons and washes. They found nothing for months. It was not until a routine helicopter aerial search while looking for illegal drug manufacturing labs that they finally found the family's minivan 3 months after their disappearance. The van was discovered in an extremely remote area of the park known as Anvil Spring Canyon, about 10 kilometers away from any paved road. The vehicle was locked and mostly intact, but 3 of the 4 tires were shredded and a wheel had come off. Evidence suggests that the tourist had driven over 3 kilometers on the rims before the van became locked in the sand. There were no footprints or any other tracks leading away from the car, and the family's passports, wallets, and money were nowhere to be found. Over 200 rescuers on foot, horseback, and helicopter spent days combing the hills but found nothing other than an empty beer bottle 500 meters from the van. By October 26th, authorities reluctantly called off the search. In the words of one search ranger, "If they are still out there, it can be presumed that they are deceased." For over a decade, the fate of the Death Valley Germans remained a mystery. Then, on November 12, 2009, over 13 years later, 2 hikers discovered scattered human bones in a remote canyon several kilometers south from their abandoned van. Among the bones, they found Cornelia Meyer's passport and an ID of her boyfriend. In June 2010, it was then confirmed that the adult male bones were those of Egbert Rimkus. The female bones were presumed to be Cornelia's, but had decomposed too far for DNA analysis. Sadly, no trace of Georg or Max was ever recovered, except a single child's shoe found near the tragic site. Years later, additional remains were discovered that confirmed the family's final path. They had been walking toward a military base boundary high in the mountains, unknowingly approaching one of the most isolated and restricted desert regions in the United States, rarely visited even by military staff. Help was never near. It is believed that short of water and shade, the Germans succumbed to heat and dehydration while trying to seek help in the desert. If you enjoyed this journey into history's forgotten chapters, then subscribe and leave a like to help my channel grow. What would you have done in that situation? Would you have turned around, stayed put by the car? Sadly, their judgment failed them on that day. This story shows how easily one can mistake continuity for safety. As long as something is still working, we assume it will keep working. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.